Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Jack Watts, and he published a book last year, 2020. Title of the book is The Three Commas Club, a true story of sex trafficking, pedophilia, and murder. And Mr. Watts has written 26 books, and you can look and see what his how many books he's written on his website, which is mcgeeandme.net. So it's mcgeeandme.net. And you can look him up on Facebook. He has like 5,000 friends, 25,000 followers. So you can see a lot of his postings there. Again, it's Jack Watts, Watts. And some of his books are Retaking the USA from Darkness to Depravity, from Darkness and Depravity, 2021. Another is Hi, My Name is Jack, One Man Story of the Tumultuous Road to Sobriety, 2014. Also, Recovering from Religious Abuse, 11 Steps to Spiritual Freedom, 2012. And he's also a prolific author of fiction books. One of the titles is Hunter's Moon, a mystery novel by Jack Watts. That was just this year, June 2021. But again, we're going to talk about this book. It's kind of, he can explain with the title name and about the information in the background. So again, the title of the book is The Three Commas Club, a true story of sex trafficking, pedophilia, and murder. So Jack Watts, are you there?
I'm here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for agreeing to the interview. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to the interview. For people who may not know your name, can you talk about, I mean, you've done a ton of books and many on different topics. Can you talk about your books and what led you to write the Three Commas Club?
I sure can. To begin with, let me just say that for your listeners, I'm going to let them have a free download of the Three Commas Club. If they go to my website, they can get an EPUB book, and it's mcgeeandme.net. Now, when you write books, and I've written quite a few that are for other people. Several of those haven't been published because they wanted them for their families and things like that. But when you write books like I do, and you have a lot of people, particularly on Facebook and the social media, people say, Jack, if you just write my story, we could make it into a movie and make $1 million. I mean, I have heard that so many times, I can't even tell you. At any rate, one of my friends that I knew fairly well said that to me. And because I knew her pretty well, I felt like I should just sit down and start listening to her story. And when I did, and she began to divulge what happened to her, and she and I had gone to dinner several times over the years. I was so stunned, horrified, and intrigued that I decided to write the book. And the title of it, The Three Commas Club, it comes from if your wealth is so great that there are 3 commas in it, it makes you a billionaire. So this is about an entitled group of billionaires who think that it is within their purview, within their right to traffic underage girls, have sex with them, hold them hostage, and in some cases, even kill them. Now, this, when I heard the story, I was I couldn't believe it. But it was true, and this happened to this girl. Now, when I wrote the book, I changed all the names and the places so that, number one, I wouldn't get sued. Number two, I wouldn't get killed. People that do the kind of things and write the kind of things that I have written, a lot of times, end up dying for it. And I didn't want to do that. But at the same time, I do have a manuscript that has all of the correct names, and I have put it in the care of 8 or 10 different people so that if something happens to me, it has become my insurance policy. And frankly, I bought a shotgun. I'm in my 70s, and I have never owned a gun before in my life, but because of the risk to my life and to Emily's, who is the heroine of the story, I bought a gun, and she's had some real troubles with this. Any rate, when we first started out with it, she gave me a call and she said, "Jack, I just have to talk to you." And so we sat down at a Starbucks, and this was before the pandemic. And it was not long after Jeffrey Epstein had been arrested. And when he was in jail, and some of the things started coming out about what had happened on
Little St. James in Orgy Island. Yeah.
Emily, her story involved St. Thomas too. So when the whole thing happened, she said, I've held this in for 15 years, and I just can't hold it in any longer. So she started telling me the story. Now here's what this group, the Three Commas Club, did. And when I say they had a club, they actually even had a ball cap made, and on the for the logo, it said "Crotch Cannibal," and on the back, on the little flap, it had something else that was so crude that I'm not even going to mention it. But these people are proud of what they do. They don't see anything wrong in what they do. They think it is their right to do this, and they pursue it. All right, so here's how it worked with this group. They had a woman like Ghislaine Maxwell. She had a big diamond ring that the number one villain, I called him Magnus Rich. He gave her a diamond ring so that she could pose as his fiancée, even though he was married and had children at the time. She would go and find these runaway girls, primarily in the panhandle area of Florida, Pensacola, Destin, Panama City, in that area, runaways. And she would befriend them and say, how would you like to work at a 5-star restaurant as a hostess on St. Thomas for the season? There will be lots of rich men there that can help you become the actress that you need to be, the model that you need to be, the movie star that you want to be, whatever it is that, these girls, their eyes would light up. And yes, I would love to do that. Put the girl in a Cadillac SUV with tinted windows, drive to the private airport, which was hundreds of miles away, go into a private hangar where all of the security cameras were disengaged, put the girls on a private plane, and they would fly them to St. Thomas. Now, here's the thing. All of these pedophile groups that work, the one thing that they had in common was flying into Charlotte Amalie Airport on St. Thomas because it's the only airport that was large enough, had the runway long enough to accommodate the kind of planes that they did. So when they would fly in, they would take them from there and bring them to the largest state, and the largest state had little bungalows, and they would put the girl in a bungalow, shut the door, and lock it from the outside. The locks weren't on the inside, they were on the outside of the door. This was the particular thing that triggered Emily, because that was one of the facts that came out when Epstein was arrested.
The second time, right? 2019, right?
Yeah, this isn't in 2008. This is what, maybe 2.5 years ago now. And so she told me that Emily worked at this restaurant too, and it was a legitimate restaurant. But what people didn't know was the hostess was the real entree. And these men would come in, and they would make her as their selection, and these girls didn't have any choice.
Right. So the employees and the hostesses, who were these girls who were trafficked, were working there legitimately, but the rich guys would show up, and that would be kind of like if you were in Thailand picking up.
The whole thing was like a double entendre. There was one level that was just a legitimate business and a really good restaurant. So the way that the whole thing kind of came undone was Emily was supposed to go to the Caribbean on a Friday afternoon, and she got a message from her husband Thursday evening. He said, "Don't come, reschedule and come on Saturday." Well, she tried to reschedule, but since it was in season, the next time that she could get there was Tuesday, but she had to be at the restaurant because she was an employee there. Also, she did the books. And so even though she was commanded by her husband not to come, and he was very brutal. In the book, I name him Bruiser, and for good reasons. And so she decided to come anyway. When she did, he was furious with her when he met her at the airport, brought her to the largest state. She went into the bungalow where they normally stay, and he locked her in and wouldn't allow her to come out. She banged on the door, beat on the door, pulled on the door, did everything that she could. There, went to the refrigerator. There was nothing there. Went to the pantry. There was nothing there. She didn't have any food. Nobody came the entire evening, night, and so she finally went to sleep. When she woke up the next morning, she was, as you can imagine, fit to be tied. She pulled on the door one more time, and because she pulled on it so many times, the lock was compromised and the door opened. And it was like, okay, I'm out. So she walked out, and she was going to go to the kitchen in the large compound and to get a cup of coffee. By this time, it was about 9 a.m, and whatever the emergency had been the evening before, she was off and didn't have any idea of what was happening. As she's walking up the stairs past the pool, she hears this large grunt, and kind of like when weightlifters, do a snatch and jerk, and then drop the weights, and it startled her. So she turned around and looked, And these two huge men, she said they were as big as sumo wrestlers, were carrying a girl, and the girl's head was back, long hair dragging, feet dragging on the ground. And Magnus Rich came out and threw two shoes at her. Both hit her, but she didn't move. So Emily said, "Oh my gosh, I think that girl is dead." And she pulled behind a pillar to get out of sight. Her husband saw her, came running at her and hit her like he was a linebacker, taking out a runner. She staggered, but she didn't fall. She went back to her room, no coffee, nothing to eat, anything. Locked herself back in and just sat there shaking. About 1:30 that afternoon, her husband came, opened the door, put all of her clothes in with the suitcases that he had kept from her. No phone, nothing, no phone cell service or anything. And said, your lunch is ready. You need to take a shower, get ready for work. And they need you there early. You need to be there at 3:30 this afternoon. And so this huge no talk rule developed between them.
And it's just kind of that environment. Like, I've done a lot of studies on Epstein, Nygaard, who was in the Bahamas, and these kind of stories all play out. The compounds, mystery people, cleaners. The Caribbean has a real underbelly, and you talk about like this. The restaurant served a variety of different purposes too, right?
It did, and it was situated on a cliff that was where fishermen went and fished below, commercial fishermen. And Emily thought that these girls that when they were, because they would work for a week or two and then you would never see them again. She thought they were being murdered. Now, the one we're pretty sure was dead. And this got so she told me when she told me the story, and the initial thing that your listeners would say, well, why didn't she come forward? Well, it's because her husband, beat the living what out of her numerous times. One time going so far as to take a broken Scotch bottle that he smashed and disfiguring her vagina with it, for which she nearly bled to death. He, ended up having to bring her to a hospital, but not to the emergency room where she would be admitted, and where there would be, law enforcement, but through a side door, and someone who was not a physician sewed her up and was paid a large amount of cash. And because that happened, it seemed like this is something that they had already established because it happened before. So she's telling all of this, and I make the commitment to write it all out, and then Epstein's murdered. Now, for your listeners, there are a lot of people who would say, well, they say that that he hung himself. It really doesn't matter whether he did or not, as far as I'm concerned about this, because she was so convinced that he killed himself. That he was murdered.
Murdered, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of have that position too, right? I think he was murdered. I don't think he committed.
Yeah. That is my position, and
That's
I'll
my
tell
position.
you why it's my position. When the two police officers, custodians, both fell asleep, they did a toxicology on them and found that they had sodium nitrate. Or is it sodium nitrate? Is the laughing gas what dentists give you to sedate you?
What is it?
In their systems, so
right.
it was piped in.
Nitrous oxide.
Nitrous oxide. So to make them go to sleep. So
right.
that's why they fell asleep. I mean, and the only people that could do this, capable of doing this, would either be the CIA, the FBI, or MI6. And MI6 because of the potential, with the royal family.
Right. Duke of York. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this is just like, any rate.
But it's important because it shows that people were, all these girls came forward after Epstein died. So they were all way too scared until that moment. And I think it ties into this story too. This kind of environment of fear.
Terror.
Terror. Better word.
Absolute terror. So Emily said, I'm done. I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this. I don't want a book. I don't want it out there. I don't want to get killed. I just want it all to go away and to keep the shades drawn and hide in fear the rest of my life. And of course, here I know all of this stuff, and it's like, well, wait a minute. We made an agreement that I would write this, and I got to do that. We've got to tell the authorities about this. And no, Jack, I'm not going to do it. I just absolutely don't want to do it. I've changed my mind. And I said, well, you're making me an accessory after the fact if I don't come forward with this. And I wasn't willing to do that. So I finished it without her. And then one of my friends called who was running for office, and I'd put a little post up telling people they ought to vote for her. And she saw it. She's, oh, Jack, that was so nice of you. I really appreciate that. She had been a state rep for a while, and she was a lawyer, and she was running to be a Supreme Court judge. So I said, do you have a few minutes? Can I tell you a story? And so I briefed her about everything that I had done. And of course, she was just mesmerized, just like I hope your audience is. And she said, said, well, I agree with you. You have no choice. You can't sit on this, and you got to come out with it. So she called the U.S. attorney, the deputy U.S. attorney for the state, and told him all about it. He said, well, I want to talk to Jack. So the next morning, I got on the phone for 45 minutes, and I talked to the deputy U.S. attorney for the jurisdiction that this would be in. And now let me just say one other thing, and kind of go back here for 1 minute. When they would take these girls to the airport, to the private airport where the jet was, and this wouldn't be like a major airport like LAX or Hartsfield Jackson, but the bigger private airports that are around. And they would bring them in and they would fly them to St. Thomas. But because St. Thomas is the U.S. Virgin Islands, it's not taking them out of the country. So there were no passports required. There was no going through customs or anything of the nature. So this really made it sweet for the pedophiles. All right. Now, getting back. So I talked to the U.S. attorney, and he said, well, I want to have an interview with you and Emily with the FBI present. Can you arrange that? And I said, absolutely. So I call her, and she just went nuts. I'm not going to talk to the FBI. I'm not going to talk to, and you shouldn't have told them. What are you doing? I mean, she was scared, big time scared.
Well, it's probably very wise to be scared, considering that Epstein was an informant for Robert Mueller back in 2007. I don't know if you're aware of that. But.
Well, so she wouldn't do it. I called the U.S. attorney back and said, it'll take me a little bit while longer to get her to be willing. And in the interim, he talked to the FBI, and they called and asked me to interview. So I went and sat down with two agents for close to 2 hours, went through every single thing. I felt really good about it. This is, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That has been, my motto for my whole adult life. And I was glad, to put all of this out there and to just be straightforward with it. And
what happened after that 2-hour meeting with the FBI?
Not a damn thing. Zip. Zero. Nada.
Not even a return call. Nothing. Not a thank you. Thank you for sharing your information.
That was the worst of the whole thing. When I just don't get it. When I was a kid, one of my favorite shows was Ephraim Zimbalist and the FBI. I love that show, and I believed it, and I believed in them. And sometimes I'll listen to Sean Hannity on the radio, and through all of the stuff with Comey and Mueller and all the rest of it, he would say, well, the top echelon is rotten, but 99.8% of the FBI is straight. I don't believe that anymore. I don't. I have zero confidence in our secret police. Zero. I just don't see it. And after Epstein, these people are still doing things like this. Now, they aren't doing it in St. Thomas. All of this happened from 2003 to maybe 2008, once Epstein was originally arrested in
Palm Beach, right? He was arrested in Palm Beach originally, right?
Yeah, Palm Beach County. They sold what they were doing down there, left the islands completely because they thought that they would be exposed.
Right. Now, you said they were terrified when he got arrested. Like it was like a rock got dropped in a puddle and reverberated through the Caribbean or whatever.
Well, and of course it is true. And Epstein was not just liked by them; he was venerated. He was the LeBron James of perversion. They referred to him as the gray-haired dude. I mean, just like King James, the gray-haired dude, and and they replicated the things that he did, and now they're operating in Las Vegas. All of these pedophiles, that's kind of that's the happy hunting ground for these predators. And still, do they have a woman that's pulling them in? That I don't know, because Emily finally got up enough courage, to when her husband beat her enough times, that she just kind of backed off, and he finally divorced her. In when he divorced her, he pulled a gun on her, put it to her head, and said, "Go online and get a cheap divorce thing, and we'll put down the terms of it." And somehow in the United States, even, I mean, I don't care how bad some of the things are, you can't get away with that in the United States of America. Have a divorce at gunpoint.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just crazy stuff. And where's this story at now after the FBI did nothing? It's just, have there been any additional events?
Well, they not any additional events that would involve either Emily or me. I put all of this out for the express purpose of saying, this is the kind of thing that happens. It happens all the time. These children that come across the border that are unaccompanied, they're almost all sex trafficked. This is evil on steroids.
Yeah, Epstein. I think Epstein was taking kids from Venezuela up through the Caribbean, kids from Mexico to up through New Mexico. So just all kinds of stuff. So there's really dark, evil stuff going on.
Well, and frankly, the value of little boys at this point is even greater than young girls, because there's so much homosexual perversion and pedophilia. So as the depravity escalates, these men are doing whatever is right in their own eyes with impunity, and law enforcement is looking the other way.
Looking the other way, right? I mean, and Ghislaine is going to trial, I think, in November, so it's only like 4 weeks away when she starts. So that might expose a lot of additional information. But
you might think so, William, but that's not the way. Last week, there was a court order all of her contacts were supposed to be revealed last week. How many of them have been revealed?
Probably none. I don't know.
None.
Tell me. None. Yeah.
None. So these people, and of course, that's what the 3 commas is all about. They are hyper wealthy, and they will use any and all of their power and influence and wealth to hide their depravity.
Yeah, Epstein was known to have $560 million in his estate. I wonder what else that they couldn't find, like those were his above board findable assets. So he was at least halfway there to the 3 Commas Club. And where's the best place for people to read this whole story?
Well, it's on Amazon. So, that's where I put it. Some of my books are, Simon and Schuster have published some of my books, but this one was so scary, I didn't even bother to use a literary agent to try and find a publisher, and I wanted it out there, and I was so I thought that I'd be safer, and Emily would be safer if we got it out there and lots of people read it. And of course, personally, I'm more interested in people reading the story than I am in making a couple of bucks. That's why I'm, put it up on mckeeandme.net for your audience to go ahead and if they want, they can, just download it and and read it.
Right.
That's fine with me.
Right. So people can get the 3 Commas Club at McGeeandme.net. So MCGeeandme.net.
And I'll keep that up there for a week or two like that, and then I'll take it down. But I just I think it's so important for people to just see for themselves. I mean, it's not an easy book to read. I mean, most of my, I mean, you can't put it down, I can assure you. Well, let me ask you, you read it.
I read the whole thing, yeah. I mean, it was fascinating. To me, it sounded like a completely legit piece of what's going on in that Caribbean environment, and probably has been happening for the last 40 or 50 years. It fits in with all the stuff at Palm Beach, all the people in the Caribbean, the ultra wealthy, transnational interests, tax evasion you talk about, so I think it's all there. And abuse, just really abuse, and almost like above the law attitude. So yeah, it's all in this book.
You know what else is interesting is that once I put this out and women started reading it, they have contacted me, so many of them, about stories of things that have happened to them, and it's been overwhelming, really. I never, ever, ever, ever thought that that I would go down this direction, but I felt led to once I mean, I didn't think I had a choice. It's just like, I got to use my talent for things that are worthwhile.
Well, yeah, no, it's a worthwhile story. So again, the author is Jack Watts, and the title of the book is The 3 Commas Club, a true story of sex trafficking, pedophilia, and murder. Jack, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And people can go get this book at his website so you can read through it. And it has great reviews. I think you have like 76 5-star reviews on Amazon. So people definitely are enjoying reading it.
Yeah, I get good reviews usually on all of my books, but there are a couple of people that gave me ones because they, I think because they're on the other side of
it. Might be. Well, I get the same thing. There's other people on the other side of me. I got tons of 1-star reviews, but I think people can kind of figure it out. But Jack, I got to run. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
God bless you.
God bless you too. Take care.